let's go ahead and expose some of our Gradebook applications web services as REST services. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head up to the top left, select File, New, and then Liferay module project. Right? We've done this a lot before already. Next thing we need to do is we need to give our project a name. So let's keep it simple. We'll call the project Gradebook-REST. We want to group our project with the rest of the Gradebook modules. So we're going to uncheck the Use Default Location. And then from there, let's go ahead and point to the Gradebook project as a whole. So now it's tucked away with our other 3 projects. Next up, we're going to be selecting the project template name. And when we click on the drop-down, we're going to be looking for REST. I'm sure you're going to want to have a little bit of rest after going through all of the exercises. And again, feel free to pause whenever you so desire. So Gradebook REST, putting our project with the rest of the Gradebook application, and then the project name is going to be REST. Let's go ahead and click Next. Next up, we're going to be working with the component class name. We're going to be calling this assignment REST. And then for the package name, we're going to call it COM Liferay Training Gradebook Service REST. All right, so com.liferay.training.gradebook.service.rest. Once you have all of that typed out, go ahead and click Finish. So project is being created, as you can tell by the progress down at the bottom right. Now that our project has been created, let's head over to the Gradebook REST project. And first thing we're going to take care of over here is the dependencies. So let's head over to our build.gradle. And we need to take care of a couple of dependencies here. So let me give ourselves here a little bit more space. And let's start adding a couple of dependencies. So again, at the making of this video, we are going to be compiling against the jar file that's within our Liferay bundle. So compile only files, right? And this is going to be 3 levels up over in the bundles folder, in the Tomcat folder, 906/lib/ext, and then this is going to be the portal kernel.jar. All right, let me double check and make sure everything is good there. Yep, so it looks good. All right, we're also going to have a dependency on the servlet and the portlet API. So let's go ahead and add those. We've added those a couple times already. Right, so java x.servlet is going to be the group. The name, right, it's going to be servlet API. We have to have the version number as well. We're going to have version 2.5. Next up is going to be the portlet API. I had to think about that one for a second. So java x.portlet is the group. The name is portlet API. And then the version number is the new version, version 3.0, so 3.0.0. One more thing we need to do, right? We're going to be implementing, or we're going to be exposing some of our services as REST services. So we know the APIs for our Gradebook, for our assignments, is over in the Gradebook-API project or module project. So we're also going to have a dependency on that as well. All right, so I'll use compile the project that's located over in the, there we go, need the double quotes there. So the project over in the modules directory within the Gradebook folder, and then this is going to be the Gradebook API. Right, and then let me close this off and then we'll save. So once we have our build.gradle all taken care of, Right, again, my habit here, I always like to do my Gradle refresh, selecting the project and using Control F5. Right, since we have our project hot deployed, right, this will be taken care of for us. But again, this is my habit. I typically don't drag and drop into the server. All right, so just double checking the dependencies. It looks like everything that we need is here. Right, so very good. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to head down to our build.gradle. So let me scroll down here a little bit and head over to the build.gradle bnd.bnd file. So we're heading over to the bnd.bnd. Oh, sorry about that. So here in the bnd.bnd, right, we know we can change the name of the bundle and the symbolic name and so on. But the line that I want to mention here is going to be here on line number 4. We're letting Liferay know that we're going to be having a couple of configuration files or config files, and that's going to be located over in the configuration folder. Now, config files are resource files. So this is going to be found over in the source main resources, and then this is where we find the configuration files. Right, and so what this is going to do for us is when we deploy this application or this module, these configuration files are going to be picked up by Liferay thanks to this line number 4, and then the properties of the configuration files are going to be applied. So this is setting up the REST extender and the other extender that's needed. So that takes care of that part. So the next thing we need to do is we need to implement our code so that we're exposing our APIs as REST services. So let's head over to the source main Java, opening up the package, and we're going to head over to the assignment REST application.java. So now that we're here, there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to be modifying or adding along the way. So the first thing is we're going to be adding a couple of methods here and exposing those methods as REST services. What's really going to happen behind the scenes is we're just going to be calling our Gradebook API. All right, so let's go ahead and get that implemented. I'm going to get rid of some of the things that we have here since we're not going to be needing them. So this first part here is okay, right? We can get our singletons, no worries there. For each one of these methods, these are our REST services. So these are the defaults here. If you deployed this, it would work, but we're going to do a little bit extra or something a little bit more fun. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a method called get assignments. So public string get assignments. All right. We know to get our assignments, we're going to need the site that we are at. Right. In order to get the site, we also need the object that represents the Liferay instance. So we're going to get the company object. Right. We're also going to be creating a list of assignments. So just the type is assignment, and we're going to be calling this list assignments. All right. Let's create that new array list here. Bad habit. This is singular assignment. And we'll use Control-Shift-O along the way to organize my imports. Going to be bringing in the Java util list, and then we're good there. All right, next up, we're going to have a try-catch block. So try, and then let's get that catch there so I don't forget it later. Okay. So what are we going to try to do? Let's first start off. We're going to be getting the company ID number, right? So in order to get that, the group ID number, in order to get that, we're going to be using the company object. So to help us with that, we're going to be calling the company service. I need to instantiate it down below. We'll get it there soon. get company by ID. Okay. And then in order to do that, we're going to be using this portal util get default company ID to help us out. So before we push on, right, we need to get some of our services here. So let me make sure I'm in the right place. So below this method. So let's start off with that company service. So instantiating our services just as we do in the OSGI world. Right? You can make it protected, you can make it private. Now let's make it private. So private company service, and then underscore company service is the name of the reference object. Control-Shift-O it along the way. And we're going to need a couple of other services too. So we're going to need the site ID. So this is going to be for the group ID service. So the group local service, and then underscore, call it the same thing, underscore group local service. Control-Shift-O takes care of the group local service. One more service we need, since we're going to be grabbing assignments, we're going to need our assignment API as well. So private assignment local service, and then just following the syntax there, underscore assignment local service, capital S there, right? And then Control-Shift-O one more time. I'll save along the way. All right, so we can bump this down here just so that it looks a little bit neater. All right, so we have the company object, and what we want to do is we want to get our sites. So we're going to be having a list of sites or a list of groups. So we're going to be creating that next. So we're going to have a list of the group object, right? These are our sites. Let's call this list groups, right? And in order to grab that, right, we're going to be using our group local service to help us out. So let's call the group local service, right? We're going to be getting our groups, right? And the way we want to get our groups is based off of the company ID, right? And so we have the company service to help us out with that. Right, and so that's over in the company object, and we'll get the group ID. Right, if things go south, right, we'll default it to 0, and we're going to set this parameter here to true. We'll use Control-Shift-O, brings in our group dependency, and this is going to be a Liferay group, since that's the site object behind the scenes. All right, so we started off getting our company object so that we can get our site ID based off of that company object. The next thing we want to do is we want to iterate through each one of our sites to see if there's an assignment over there. Right, so So for each site within the list of groups or list of sites, right, calling our assignments, right? So for each assignment that we find within the site, we're going to be adding it to the assignments list. So add the, oh, that didn't quite work. So just add everything. Okay. Right, so we'll make a call to the assignment local service, right, to get the assignment by the group ID. So get assignment, right, get assignment by group ID, right, and then the way we get the group ID, in this case, since we don't have a variable for it, we can call the group object, to get the group ID. So get all of the assignments in all of the sites within Liferay. Once we do that, we are going to return the result as JSON. Serialize. All right, and this is going to be our assignments array or assignments list. All right, so that's the logic there for the get assignments method. All right, and then if things go south, let's throw an exception. So exception. Okay. And then we can return whatever we want, whatever it is. Up to you. Doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. All right, so a couple things we need to do along the way to make this work. So let's head towards the top here, and we have the component annotation. And in the component annotation, there's going to be a couple of other settings, a couple of other properties that we need to set. And so again, I like to expand this out a little bit. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to add the property element. So adding the property element there, remembering the comma at the end. So a couple properties we need to set. So we're going to disable Liferay's auth verifiers. So this is just more so for testing. I'm going to say, hey, Liferay, don't worry about the authentication. Okay. We'll do the same thing for OAuth as well. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set it here, but you can also set it in this application path up here as well. So when we're referencing our REST service, there's going to be a specific syntax that we need to use. It's usually the URL of our Liferay instance, so localhost 8080/o/ the application path / and then our REST service. And so we could change the greeting here, but instead in the property annotation, I'm going to change it here. So OSGI JAX-RS application base. Right, and then that's going to be /gradebook -rest. All right, one more here. The OSGI rest name. Right, we're going to be calling this gradebook.rest, like so. All right, next thing we need to do is we're going to jump back over to this get assignments method. And we're going to add a couple of annotations to it to expose it as a REST service. So first annotation here is get, right? So HTTP get. Next thing is going to be the quote unquote path. So as we mentioned just briefly, right, we're going to use localhost 8080/o/gradebook rest, and then the next / to get the get assignments method call is what we're going to be declaring. So this will be the path. Its value is going to be /assignments. Using Control-Shift-O, taking care of the import error there. Right, and then how do we want to produce the result? Well, we're already returning the result as JSON, so this is going to produce. Right. Well, there we go. This will be media type dot application. Should be all caps. Sorry about that. Application _ and we're going to be selecting JSON. Okay, so media type dot application JSON using Control-Shift-O one last time. We're going to be using the JavaX WSRS. Okay, once we have that, go ahead and click Finish, and then we'll save the file. All right, last thing we need to do is deploy the Gradebook REST. What I'm going to do is head over to my Gradle tasks, head over to Gradebook, REST, build, and then deploy. We still have one more method to implement. If you want to, you can implement that method as well. Let's take a look here. I need the equal sign there. That's my fault. All right, so before we deploy, let's do a little quick check here. So first thing, up here on line 30, we actually don't need this line of code. The application path, as that annotation showed, is actually being set here on line 36. So we'll be good to go. Next up, I'm just gonna do a little check around, make sure that everything is okay. All right, and one thing I need to change here, right, we're going to be getting our groups or our sites, and we want to get all of the sites within our Liferay instance. So the Liferay instance is going to be the company ID here. All right, so with all of that, let's go ahead and head over to the Gradebook REST, build, and then deploy. All right, so once it's been deployed, let's go ahead and head over to our web browser. We'll open up a new tab and we'll head over to localhost 8080/gradebook-rest/assignments. And once we do, we'll see our REST service is called, right? We have each one of the assignments that we have created so far. Now, before we call this good, we're going to go ahead and add one more method. So let's head over to Liferay Developer Studio once again, and we're going to be implementing another method here. Right, so now that we have the idea, let's go ahead and shortcut this just a little bit. So starting off with my annotations, this is going to be @get. I'm going to use @path, setting the specific endpoint or the URL. It's going to be assignment, so singular. And then we want to be able to get a single assignment. So we're going to have an assignment ID here. So assignment ID. All right, and then all of this is going to be producing, so produces. Right, following the same syntax we did before. It's going to be the same thing as above. Media type application underscore JSON. It's going to be string, so be careful there. All right, with all of this, we need to bind this to a specific method. So we'll call it public string. So public string, let's call this get assignment, so singular. I know in the book or in the instructions it says plural, but let's try to be specific here. It's kind of difficult or very easy to get our names mixed up there. All right, so public string get assignment singular. Here in our method signature, we're going to be passing the parameter assignment ID. In order to do that, we're going to use this @param, @path param. Sorry about that. So @path param, and then retrieve or get that assignment ID. Okay, that's going to be a long assignment ID. Control-Shift-O resolves the error here on path param. All right, so this is going to be very simple. So try, then catch. Let's bump this down here. Bump that down there. Okay, so here in the try part, it's going to be very simple. We're going to return our JSON factory util. So JSON factory util.serialize. Serialize. All right, so we're going to be returning an object. We're just going to be returning the assignment. So in order to do that, we'll make our call to the assignment local service dot get assignment. Right, and then we're going to be passing in the assignment ID. Right, so I'm going to bump this down here just for syntax. All right, now that our Gradebook REST has been redeployed, I'm going to head back over to my web browser. I'm going to be looking for an assignment ID. Kind of a helpful tip here. If you call this REST service in Firefox, Firefox actually formats this really nicely. As you can see, I don't have Firefox on my computer, but if you do this exercise in Firefox, this comes out really nice. So I'll go ahead and give that a try. So I'm looking for my assignment ID number. There's a 1, a 101, a 502, a 503. So assignment / and then an ID number. Let's do 101. And then we have the details of that specific assignment. So making a REST service is pretty simple, right? We created a module project using the REST template, and we just added the logic to retrieve whatever it is that we wanted to display back over in our web browser. Now, in our example, it's pretty straightforward here. We just retrieved, or we got some things, right? You can expand this exercise to do things to our assignments, whether it's update or delete or even add them. So as for our formal exercise, right, we have completed our REST. It is all finished.